Good morning and welcome to, God, it's May, isn't it? May's Fireside Chat. So a little bit different this time round. You might notice that the panel aren't with us today, but I wanted to use the opportunity to catch up with Splunk or Cisco Splunk or whatever they now are following the acquisition a couple of months ago. So I'd love to firstly welcome you all. Thank you everyone for joining as usual, for those joining live or joining on catch up. And Mark, big welcome to you as well. Thank you. This is your first Fireside Chat with Cisilion, so I'd like to welcome you aboard. Would you like to just say hello and introduce yourself, because you'll probably do a better job than I will.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for the invite, Rob. Greatly appreciated for this opportunity to chat to yourself and everyone on board. So my name's Mark Brown. I work for Splunk, recently acquired by Cisco. I lead the UK solution engineering team. There's around 48 solution engineers working directly with customers, working with them, helping them with Splunk, and helping their business gain a lot of value from utilising our technology.
Fantastic, thank you, Mark. And for those that don't know me, I'm Rob Quickenden. I'm the CTO here at Cisilion, so we're one of Cisco's largest UK solution partners. Mark, I mean, it's a really exciting time, I guess, right, to work for Splunk or Cisco, or I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to call you still these days. Yeah, either or. I saw the Gartner Magic Quadrant report yesterday as well. So, you know, Splunk top right quadrant, 10th year running, I think.
That's right. Certainly in the security space, yeah. It's we've been very privileged to be up there for such a long time, especially from where our humble roots came from. So yeah, it's a privilege to be there, especially with some esteemed colleagues as well.
Absolutely. I mean, look, it'd be really great, I think, for anyone listening later on, or thinking, actually, tell me what Splunk is, right? I mean, it was a huge acquisition, right? $28 billion, absolutely huge. For those that don't know, Mark, and I guess maybe do a technical version and a what is it we ask ChatGPT? Explain this as if I'm an 8-year-old, right? Tell us what Splunk is.
Absolutely. So Splunk's been around for about 20 years now. So I think it was 2003 that we were first founded, and it was founded by 3 guys, and ultimately they ran a data center, and they wanted to find a quick way of searching logs within that data center. So they produced Splunk, and they called it the Google for the data center. So the idea was that anybody would be able to bring data into Splunk and be able to run a search and find answers to the questions that they might have asked that data. Fast forward 20 years, we've grown, we've evolved, the product's taken on a lot more. We got into security. People realized that not only could they search data for looking at uptime or performance issues, but they could start to understand different security threats that might be appearing. So for the last 10 years, or well, longer than that, we've been utilizing Splunk in a security format. But as you've seen recently, over the last 10 years, we've been a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for the SIEM. In addition to that, more recently, back in last year, we actually made it up into the Magic Quadrant for the APM and observability as well. So Splunk as a whole is a platform that allows you to bring data in and run searches against it. Now, depending on your view and what questions you want to ask, you may have a security lens on it and look at it for get security answers. You may have an observability lens to look at it from observability. It may be OT, it may be business analytics. There's a whole host of different lenses that you can put onto that data. And ultimately, the type of data you can put in is pretty much anything that's human readable. So it could be a log, it could be an API, it could be some network data that we translate and then ingest into Splunk. That's then searchable and indexed and searchable.
Wow! And so hopefully, I think that's kind of what makes it a bit more unique, right? And I think, you know, going back to my point earlier about the Gartner quadrant for SIEM, and I think a lot of the other players in that, even the others in the top right, are very much SIEM players, right, in this space. And I think what you touched on there about being able to use the same platform both for security and incident event monitoring, but also then for, well, actually, that's what's going on from a security and alerting perspective, but actually this is what's going on from a performance perspective, and where might there be bottlenecks in our application performance or in our end user experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to how customers are first introduced to Splunk. I think if you speak to 50% of our customers, they'll say that we're a security vendor. If you speak to the other half, they'll say that we're an observability vendor, and probably a few will say that we do business or IoT or other functions. The truth of it is we're a data analytics platform, and depending on how you were introduced to Splunk, enables you to take full advantage of that. And I think the true power really comes when we start looking at some of our largest customers, which actually come outside of one sort of view and say, okay, well, this data, this log from this server, we're using it for observability. We're also using it for security. We're also using it for our applications and our business analytics. So it's extremely powerful, and quite often we say that Splunk is limited by the imagination of the users trying to utilize that data.
It's an interesting one. So like comparing it to some of the Adobe Illustrator suites, isn't it? That's all about power of the imagination. But I think it's a funny challenge, isn't it? And I think we certainly struggle sometimes from an identity perspective as well. We as a partner, really focus on two key vendors, like Microsoft and Cisco. We're really excited ourselves, and we'll talk a bit more about that later, I'm sure, about the acquisition from that side as well, because it really strengthens our capability within the Cisco estate. But also the fact that, of course, that Splunk can be deployed through Azure as well, through Marketplace as well. That's really good for us as well. So we're sort of double excited, I guess, about those things. And that identity thing is quite interesting, isn't it? When you think about actually what you're known for. And I think, we certainly have clients that know us for one thing and not something else. And I always find it, I think you always kind of assume that people know what your products do. And like you say, it kind of depends where you come from. So, Mark, you talked about how your customers know you and those things. I mean, you've got some really huge customers, right? I mean, could you give us an example of some of the, I guess, the public brands that people would know of that use your platform?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we've got the largest sort of FTSE 100 customers. So all of those major brands are huge Splunk customers, and we've got over 15,000 customers globally across 110 countries. They're pretty much every industry we touch. There's comms, energy, financial services, higher education, manufacturing, public sector, etc., etc. So there are many brands, many names that you'll probably recognize. To think of a few that are probably in the focus of what the mainstream will probably be aware of, probably the likes of Siemens, Singapore Airlines, Gatwick, Imperial College, maybe Papa John's is probably a well-known brand, as long as Domino's, McLaren, the F1 company, or Heineken, the lager company. So again, we touch so many different sectors, the likes of retail with Tesco's, John Lewis, some of the finance, NASDAQ, and all the major banks, and technology vendors, the likes of Slack, people like that. So Splunk is very adaptable. I mean, one of my favorite use cases is actually Gatwick Airport, where we look at, they use data that comes in from the road traffic systems to understand the traffic network going down to the airport. If there's a problem with the road networks, i.e. there's an accident or something, they'll actually change their staffing patterns. So they'll send a lot of their staff off on lunch to go and have a break, because they know that it's going to be a massive influx of customers all coming through one system. Well, exactly. So this enables them to be really efficient, and they've got compliance and goals, KPIs to get customers through the airport within 15 minutes. So by utilizing this Splunk to actually manage that flow of customers coming in, and then be able to monitor those customers going through the security, enables Gatwick to actually meet their KPIs, and that's one of my favorite ones because it's a non-traditional security observability use case. It's kind of something a little different, and we've got examples of that all over the globe. Some exciting ones around F1 and fighter jets and all kinds of very, very cool things like that.
Love that. And I suppose that's the point you made, right? And when we think about, on paper, right? So, reading reports this morning about, SIEM and things, and you think, well, actually, it is about that data observability, right? Data analytics. So like you say, right, with the Gap example, that's not traditionally, I guess, where the majority of people maybe listening would think about where Splunk comes in. You'd think of it from, network and switching and security, those kind of things. You wouldn't necessarily think about it from, traffic sensors and those kind of things, and actually how taking that data gives you that total holistic view of whatever that situation could be, right? You could imagine that same situation in retail, for example, when you're thinking about, again, traffic flow, train delays, congestion, those kind of things. What impact does that have on, almost anything, right? Stadia, on retail leisure complexes, those kind of things. So it's really interesting thoughts, actually, is how that power of data really comes together, and that kind of collective view. And I assume from that, the data that you collate and bring together can then be used. So you talked about APIs in, presumably, right? Then organizations can use those same APIs out to pull that collected information and have that that kind of collected, correlated view of different data sources.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's really the power of Splunk, is around that correlation and bringing those various data sources together, and then providing some sort of output to action against. Another, I wouldn't say common, but it's not uncommon. A use case is actually customers bringing badge reader information into the system, so then they can start to understand security within the organization, which individuals have come into the building, and then understanding when people have logged on to a system within the office, and understanding, is that really that person in that office, or is it somebody who's imitating them, or maybe we've got a breach external. So connecting different data sources, both OT, traditional IT systems, external APIs, even sharing of intelligence. Some of our security technology that we've got today enables customers and organizations to put in threats and share that with networks, so that others can start to learn and benefit from some of the investigations and concerns that other organizations are seeing. So extremely powerful, and really the power is that correlation and that sharing, and being able to take action. We see this stuff.
Wow. And I guess, on the Splunk side as well. So from a competition perspective, right? And you touched on, the couple of kind of pillars in which it operates. But for people listening today, who else will they come across out there? Who's kind of the key competition from Splunk's perspective today with regards to the SIEM side and the observability data collection side?
Yeah, again, this is quite interesting, because I think when we start looking at competition, quite often those that we are competing against we also partner with as well, and that really comes down to the platform. So where we start looking at security, for example, today we would put Microsoft Sentinel as a competitor against our enterprise security, which is our SIEM technology. However, we take in a load of Microsoft data sources to help with security and enhancing our security within enterprise security. And additionally, we've got customers that have these big enterprise agreements with Microsoft. So Sentinel comes as part of that package. But there are areas that Sentinel doesn't cover today. So they go for a dual strategy where they'll have Sentinel covering some elements and enterprise security covering some of the other elements. So we're seeing that we do get a lot of dual strategies. Probably the other ones in there that we do see from time to time is Chronicle from a competitive on the SIEM side. I think observability is slightly different. I think the observability market is a newer market. I think you've got the traditional IT operations, which Splunk has traditionally been very strong in. The new observability market, there's a lot of players out there, the likes of Datadog, New Relic, Dynatrace, and all of those we compete against, and most of them will also complement in the ways that we collect data and correlate that with other systems. So I think from a holistic view, or we probably don't compete with many. I mean, probably the closest one to Splunk would be Elastic as a data platform, but Elastic has traditionally come from a build perspective, whereas Splunk has traditionally come from a buy, where we'll create apps and things that allow our customers to have that view, whereas Elastic will expect people to build that. So they're probably our closest holistic competitor. But again, we have examples where we take in Elastic data into Splunk and augment that with other data. So it's a very tough one. I don't like to say we don't compete with anyone, because we compete with everyone and we compete with no one. We're much as the IT industry.
Yeah, that's the world we're in, isn't it? I think everyone is a competitor and a partner these days, with particularly the huge tech giants, right? That's kind of how it works. I think if I look at you look at the Cisco and Microsoft better together story, that's something that 6-7 years ago you would never have thought would have happened, and yet there's partnership alignment now across multiple aspects of those technology stacks, right? Which is kind of good for us, right? Because we kind of bet on those two. Which I guess brings us to the next point of topic, right? Is and we touched on the beginning, $28 billion acquisition. I think the ink's only just dried really on this. Absolutely. I know we caught up a couple of weeks ago when you were presenting to the Cisco team about all this stuff. So this is kind of how new this acquisition is. But in short, Mark, why do you think Cisco have bought Splunk, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I joined Splunk over 10 years ago, and 10 years ago there were rumors about Cisco buying Splunk, and
every year,
so it was pretty much every year from there. So when the acquisition actually happened, we almost had to take a double take and sort of think, is this real or is this just another rumor that's out on the internet? I think the nice thing with Cisco is there is so little competitiveness in our technology offerings for our customers, and so much better together with the two companies. So it's just a natural fit. I think if another large vendor such as Microsoft or Google or someone like that would have taken us over, I think there would have been a lot more conflict there. So from that perspective, Cisco is a natural choice in my mind, as a technologist, of how we can take some of the best stuff that Cisco do in the network, some of the best stuff that we do around security and observability, and bringing those two together to really give true value to our customers. So personally, out of anybody that could have acquired Splunk, Cisco is probably the best option, and certainly within Splunk, we're excited to have them take us on board and really enhance our story, giving us the ability to really take our roadmap, our visions of what we wanted to give to customers, and accelerate that, and hopefully on the Cisco side really enhance what they've got in their software offerings and bring them some customers that possibly they weren't exposed to before. So really, there's a tagline at the moment inside Cisco and Splunk, the better together, and that's definitely how we all feel at this stage.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When you think as well about the footprint that Cisco have across, just the network infrastructure space, the service provider space, the internet as a whole, right? The internet is, to use Cisco's phrase, the internet is pretty much built on Cisco technology. You can only see the benefits that's going to provide to data center providers, cloud service providers, telcos. You can kind of see where those things are, and I guess the other side that will be interesting, and I guess more for people listening, is that Splunk is not known as a cheap product, right? In fact, it was it's, whenever you do any research on Splunk, price always kind of comes up, right? But I would imagine that with the acquisition and Cisco now being able to work better together, to use the pun, then actually that's only going to be a good thing from an integration perspective and a price point perspective, right? Because we expect these products as a seller. We expect Splunk to be available on the global Cisco price list, right? So that should make it a lot easier for Cisco partners to become Splunk partners. I appreciate some are both already, and actually for those organizations using the technology, then that becomes one vendor as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, today we are operating as separate entities under the Cisco banner. So for partners that want to sell Splunk, we still need partners to go through our Splunkverse and go through that level of certification. And same with Cisco.
What did you call that? Splunkverse, was that?
Splunkverse. So instead of universe, or partnerverse, sorry, partnerverse. So yeah. So we've got our partnerverse program where essentially we hope that many Cisco partners are going to come and on board and start to see that value of what Splunk does. Splunk traditionally has been quite a technical sell. We've sold to a lot of the techies within the organization. So there's a lot to learn to understand what value really comes from Splunk to a business, and we encourage as many partners as possible to go through that. I think that probably touches on some of the comments around the expensive part as well with Splunk. I think Splunk as a whole has not been able to articulate that value particularly well to businesses and capture it. So where it's been a technical sell, we'll quite often work with the technologists and then translating that value that organization is getting to the business value that that company wants to see is not always translated particularly well. So in recent years, we've been doing a better job. We've been doing a better job of capturing that value and be able to package it up in a way that our customers can then take it back to their business and articulate it going forward. But I think the value and the expensive element has been more an issue of us not being able to articulate the value clearly after a customer has purchased the product. So hopefully with the big Cisco world now and more resources available, we'll be able to work a lot closer with our customers and make sure that value that they are realizing is actually captured and shared internally, and hopefully that starts to reduce that Splunk is expensive conversation.
Yeah, I think Cisco have always been, acquisitions happen right across every vendor space, but I think Cisco have always been very good at acquisitions and actually bringing the value of what they've purchased into those portfolios. If you look at what they've done with Meraki as an example, and Thousand Eyes of late as well, I think it's they've done a really great job of bringing that together. Okay, Meraki took a while to realize what they were doing, but I think it's really strong. And I look at this as a partner side and think it's great, right? This opens up a huge additional market that helps us to just complete that journey for a client, right? As you say, it's security is paramount, always will be, always has been, but I think actually bringing the same platform together and having a common set of data that can be accessed in different ways is extremely powerful. Like you said, I think the value of Cisco adding, whatever they do, right? And as we said at the beginning, the ink's just dry. Anything we talk about today is almost speculation, right? So we don't know what's going to happen. I don't think Cisco quite know what's going to happen longer term, but imagining what will happen, I think, building the portfolio that Cisco have already started building with App Dynamics, Thousand Eyes, the layers they've already built into their network stack and into their meeting room endpoints and things. I think that combined with the power of what you've got within Splunk is going to be absolutely game changing in the future, right? I think we're going to probably have to wait 12 to 18 months to see how that materializes. But looking from the outside in, it can only be exciting, right? I think for anyone part of this, you don't spend 28 billion, right, on something without having a good view of what you're going to do. So obviously people know what they're going to do. But I think it's
yeah, really most exciting. Definitely. I mean, we've already seen the acceleration of a lot of that integration and planning already happening. I mean, the AppD team and the full stack observability suite on day of acquisition, that engineering team all came under the Splunk umbrella, so we could start working on that observability messaging and making sure that we've got a clearly defined strategy and path going forward. So that's been underway since the ink was still wet on the contract, and then we're working on what that go-to-market now looks like for this, and as you say, I'm sure over the Splunk.conf, which is our user conference, and Cisco's user conference that are all coming up, we're going to start to see some exciting announcements about where we're taking this technology and where the strategies are going.
It'll be good to see whether some of the funky names that you've got for these partner programs and conferences will remain, or whether they'll be a bit less exciting, right? And I think it's always the fun, isn't it? When you start as something so small, I guess everyone starts with something small, but when it starts as something so small, you get these really cool, quirky terms that just become stuck with the brand, right? And it'll be a shame to see those things, those disappear. I love some of those. I love some of those ones you've talked about. I've just written some of those down. I'm going to start using those. The verse one's quite common, right? I guess with there's a big UC event called Comsverse as well, which uses that word. Yeah. It's great. It's a great one. So I mean, if we shift gear a little bit, I think then, and there will be partners listening to this as well, but from your side, what do you get most excited about with regards to not so much now being under the Cisco umbrella, but actually being able to work with Cisco partners, right? It's a hugely mature partner ecosystem, probably one of the best partner ecosystems out there. What excites you about working with obviously partners like ourselves, but the wider Cisco partner community?
For me, it's learning. I mean, we've always been very curious as an organization, and certainly as solution engineers. So we're always about the learning and understanding how different parts of the business work, so we can better understand how Splunk might benefit those different areas. So for me, understanding how partners really sort of interact with Cisco customers in this particular instance, and some of the conversations they have and those use cases to try and understand, okay, how can Splunk bring value to the partner and to that customer to really enhance their experience. So as I've mentioned, Splunk is a data platform, so we're very adaptable to be able to fit into most situations. And whilst we do have some really exciting conversations around F1 jets or beer making processes and things like that, traditionally the majority of our conversations are around security and observability. So now getting into working with Cisco partners, understanding how they're talking to their customers about the business value they bring around networking, AP, voice, all these different components, which we've really been on the periphery of before in previous. It's not been the forefront of our conversations. that for me is really exciting. It's these new conversations, these new areas of value that we're going to be able to bring into that world, and also work with new partners. I mean, we've got a fantastic partner base already within Splunk. We've got some really strong partners that we trust wholeheartedly with our process, and I'm looking forward to building those relationships with the Cisco partners going forward. So yeah, really exciting times for hopefully for yourselves as well as us. So yeah, really good.
Yeah, I think on that side, I think we are. It is really exciting. I think it's always exciting when one of the key vendors that you work with acquires someone else that you don't necessarily work with. It's even more exciting when they acquire one that you do. But we're not. We weren't a Splunk partner prior to acquisition. I think we are now going through that. What is probably a short-term process of onboarding. Of course, onto that, but we've already started having more conversations, right? Purely because we're talking about the acquisition with our customers, whether that's through their Cisco maintenance renewals or whether that's about talking about new managed services. We work with a lot of clients that are going through huge network refreshes at the moment and consolidating a lot of their technologies. And I think it's great to be able to start having the conversations about what you're doing and how you're going to start using that data. More from an observability perspective, to be honest, earlier, right? So rather than layering this stuff off and having it something that, I guess traditionally would be sold after the effect or sold before and layering on, to be able to have that conversation sooner at the beginning, I think gives us a lot more credibility. I think it is far better for the client because these conversations are happening sooner. It's part of a design fabric rather than being a bolted on, oh, can I sell you this product, right? I think that's really interesting. I think, again, looking at what Cisco are going to do with this space, right? They've done so much, and I think many people aren't aware actually of the tight integrations that they've made with things like Thousand Eyes, right, into their wider portfolio. And I think this is, I can see the direction that Cisco are focused on. I think this is definitely a really exciting space to be working in. And it was funny when we were chatting the other week, and I think you alluded to at the very beginning, we talked about Microsoft, Cisco from the SIEM side being on leaders at the top right. And I think you mentioned to me that Microsoft are actually one of Splunk's largest customers as well. So that was quite an interesting
Yeah, we've
one.
got last year during our user conference, we announced a huge partnership with Microsoft. From that announcement, we announced that we were available via their marketplace, and the Splunk customers with the big enterprise agreements could now procure Splunk through that. And although Splunk's always been available to deploy yourself on Azure,
Yes.
We made our intentions clear about Splunk clouds going into Azure, which is obviously our SaaS offering, which today is available on AWS and Google already. So that was really exciting for us to have that closeness and that partnership with Microsoft announced, and we've seen a lot of advancements of that since that announcement. I guess for Cisilion, that puts you in a fantastic position for Splunk as well. Obviously, you're a huge Microsoft partner, you're a huge Cisco partner, and with Splunk coming on board, it'd be great to hear maybe some of your plans of how you're looking to tackle this massive software acquisition, which is Splunk, and maybe how that can start to benefit your customers. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be. I need to be careful. I'm not writing our business plan for next year on a webinar, right? But it absolutely is, right? I think we, as you say, thank you for that. We are a large Microsoft Azure partner. As a Microsoft partner, we are measured on the growth of our Azure consumption. That includes marketplace, right? So things that our clients buy through the Azure marketplace absolutely helps us. It helps our customers because they can spend their their Azure credit, depending on what they've got within their enterprise agreement. So it's great that Microsoft now allow you to buy and consume services through the store or through the marketplace against that committed spend. But absolutely, again, for us, right, it helps us drive those conversations forward. And it's, Splunk's always had, I think, or certainly, some of the clients I've spoken to since acquisition have had a reputation for being, well, they're on-prem only, right, and not cloud. And we know that's not the case, right? But I think actually some of these movements around this partnership with Microsoft from last year helps to cement our clients on that journey, right? And I think that the larger the client, the more on-premises resources they're going to have, but they're all on that kind of direction, right? And we look at the growth year on year, certainly the growth that we have in Azure, and I could definitely see this, over the next 12, 18 months being part of that success, as well as, of course, as we touched on, just the fact that this is now or will become more to the point, a Cisco product set, right? So this is something that extends our capability. We've got great relationships with the Cisco sellers, now with the Splunk sellers as well. So yeah, I think for us, this just helps us meet our customers kind of where they are, explore new options. It is a really exciting time. There's lots of new building projects going on. We do quite a lot in the new building space, and I think these are the kind of conversations now with real connected buildings, connected infrastructure, everybody needing to have smarter buildings that are more sustainable, use less power, security and well-being, not just from a security from a traditional sense of phishing attacks and things, but personal security within buildings as well, how pulling all of that information together. And hopefully feeding that into dashboards like Microsoft Fabric, for example, as well, and building really powerful, rich tools as well to visualize and analyze the data. So I think for us, I rambled on there a lot, but I think there's lots of things that I think we're excited about, both from a technical perspective, but also from a deepening our relationships with our clients and deepening our relationships with our strategic technical partners.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I'm really excited by it, and I'm looking forward to working closely with yourself and then Cisilion over the coming months and years. So
yeah, it's fab. I mean, I guess if you had, if you were, and you're going to get this now, right? You're out. I'm sure our sellers and our technical pre-sales team will be bringing Splunk into a lot more of our client conversations. If you had to say anything to, thank you for the intro at the beginning, but if you had to say anything to any organization going through a major infrastructure change or a data center migration or a move from data center to cloud or hybrid cloud, what would be your kind of key think about this and look at this before you make your plans with Splunk? What would you kind of say to people?
Yeah, so I mean, for Splunk, it's important to sort of get an understanding of where you are today and what value you're getting out. It's very easy to put stuff in to Splunk and kind of forget about it, and it ferments, it gets old, and sometimes it's no longer relevant anymore. So it's worth taking that step back and saying, okay, let's do an assessment of what we've got today, what's of value, what is of medium and low value to us, what is it that we actually want to achieve with this move. Once we get that state of the nation, then that ability to actually plan that migration, start moving the system in. A lot of our customers that are going to the cloud are wanting to monitor cloud native technologies as well. So actually a lot of the on-prem stuff is superseded by that cloud stuff. And again, what needs to move, what needs to be modified in the way that we monitor. Once the data is in Splunk, and we run search against it and create these reports and dashboards, it's very quick and simple just to say, okay, well, no longer look at this data source, look at this new one, and update in a fresh and visual way. So for me, it's all about, taking that step back, taking stock of what's really valuable to you, and then planning accordingly. Quite often when we come in and we work on things like tools consolidation and projects such as that, quite often the common question we get asked is, okay, well, this is our tool. We need what we do there in Splunk, and then it's like, do you? Or why are you not continuing with that tool then? If it's bringing you that much value, surely you stay with that tool. So it's about changing that mindset, the customer, and saying, forget what you've got today. What do you need today? What is it that you're trying to achieve? What value do you want to gain? And then we'll work with you on that, on working out, okay, what data supports that use case, and then what do we need to do to build it? We don't necessarily just want to replace. We get that a lot with SIM replacements, where it's, okay, this SIM tool's no longer working. We want all the searches in there. Well, do you really? or is that the reason you're moving away from that SIM tool?
It is interesting, isn't it, why people look at alternate products, and I think, I'm not sure in your space, but there's a huge amount of redundant technology, technology that overlaps, technology that's capable of doing the same as something else that different parts of an organization have purchased. I can imagine with the extensibility that you've got within the Splunk data platform that you see a lot of that as well, right? From where real estates and facilities may use the technology, from where OT providers may use it, from where traditional IT might use it. And I guess that's a big opportunity, isn't it, to bring those solutions together?
It is, and again, this is probably one of the benefits that we bring to customers in a lot of instances, is joining up teams. Quite often, once you're in a customer environment, they don't necessarily know that they've got 3 or 4 different Splunk instances and how those instances are being used. And once you start speaking to the customers and start connecting those dots, all of a sudden, quite often we connect customers with customers. They don't know these other individuals. And then we start growing those use cases. And this is where we start to see tactical deployments of Splunk, which could be classed as expensive, to something a bit more strategic, where we start to get a platform and start to reutilize those data sources. Quite often, a data source brought in for a project could benefit the other areas. It's just that they don't know that they're bringing it in. So again, this is where it comes down to that value in us trying to get around, and our partners to be, relying on our partners to be able to get around these customers and just share what others are doing within the organization. There is one bank, which I shall not name, but that I know that they've got over 15 instances of Splunk running within the organization, and we are, running around, connecting people, making sure that everyone's aware of what everyone else is doing, and we get so much more value once those teams start to connect and talk. So if nothing else, we can start connecting people with
well, and I guess they do, right? So not only are you making that data available everywhere, but it's got to be a lot cheaper to buy, to buy it to buy it centrally than buy it in 50 different pots, right?
Absolutely.
Mark, listen, thank you. It's been really great just seeing the time. It's been really great chatting. So I hope people found that useful. I guess key takeaways. Splunk is now Cisco, right? So fantastic news. Don't expect anything to change in the immediate term. So I think both entities still operating together. If you want to know more, please do reach out to us on the links below in the chat. We will be a Splunk partner soon, but happy to help. We've got great relationships with the Splunk team and the Cisco team, so please, happy to have those conversations. Look, if you're using Splunk today and you're excited by the acquisition or not, please tell us in the comments as well. Always good to hear from you. And yeah, fantastic. Well done again on the Gartner quadrant. I mean, it would have been a right downer, wouldn't it, to have done 9 years and not get 10 at the top. So
absolutely.
Well done. And Mark, thanks again for your time. It's been fantastic, and thanks you to everyone listening, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, everybody. It's been a great pleasure talking.
I was supposed to say like and subscribe. I think my son told me I have to do that and say like and subscribe. So there we go, like and subscribe. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.